Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Institute of Critical Study of Society Sunday morning program at the Neville Proctor Marxist Library, which is a physical place in Oakland. But now our program is held remotely for the past 1 year because of COVID. My name is Raj Sahai, who along with Jean Rule and 6 other members of the program committee organize our programs. The Institute for the Critical Study of Society was formed in 2004 to preserve Marx's heritage as well as for supporting ongoing struggles for social justice and for change towards socialism, hopefully leading soon to communism when we believe a truly civilized world would be attained. So the opinions expressed in our lectures, workshops, and publications are solely those of its authors. They do not represent any group consensus. We are united, however, in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, who in his 11th thesis said, on Feuerbach, said the philosophers have interpreted the word in different ways. The point, however, is to change it. So our speaker today is one who is actually an example of those who are trying to change the world, the rotten world that we inhabit. In his case, it is in India, a land where Buddha, Mahavir, and Gandhi once preached kindness, tolerance, and nonviolence, but it is quite different today. And perhaps it wasn't what they said even at that time. So anyway, Mihir Desai is a senior advocate, which is attorney, practicing law at Bombay High Court and also the Supreme Court of India. His expertise is in civil rights law. He's a co-founder of Human Rights Law Network and was director of India Center of Human Rights and Law for 10 years. He was also the editor of a journal called Combat Law, which is a human rights magazine or journal, for the same period. He's presently the National Vice President of People's Union for Civil Liberties, in short PUCL, a rough equivalent of ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union in the United States. Among the cases he has argued in the courts of law, in various courts of law in India, on behalf of mostly behalf of the victims, is the infamous Gujarat pogrom of Muslim minority in 2002, which most people attending here are familiar with. He has challenged the Citizenship Amendment Act and National Register of Citizens Act, which the present BJP government attempted to use to intimidate minorities. And he was also involved in the recent so-called government's toolkit case. The toolkit case was an accusation against a young woman, I think 22 or 23 years of age, who supported the ongoing farmers movement using the internet. So she was accused of using a toolkit. Toolkit was some instructions how to use certain things to get across to people. He represented a number of the accused in the Bhima Koregaon urban naxal case relating to issues concerning hate speech. Now, this is a very significant case. And both Sandeep and my acquaintance, and in case Sandeep, a friend, is actually in the jail in Pune. And she's herself a prominent attorney. So he represents a number of accused. In that case, there are other intellectuals and activists in that, all well known. Again, an attempt to silence any kind of intellectuals supporting the struggles of the poor people and the working people. He was involved in a case challenging the abrogation of the Article 370 of the Constitution, which removed the autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir, a state that had that autonomy since partition of India. He has also been involved in a number of other cases concerning environmental issues, women's rights, children's rights, police brutality, and freedom of speech and expression, and the citizens' right to protest. He's been a member of a number of independent people's tribunals concerning human rights issues in India. He was the legal counsel for International Tribunal on Kashmir. Today, he will be speaking about the erosion of parliamentary democracy and federal structure in India. The talk will also include the use of existing and new draconian laws that have been implemented. It will be in the overall context of the BJP government's efforts to suppress dissent and opposition and attempt to hollow out all institutions of accountability which were built up since independence. Mihir will have about an hour for his presentation, followed by brief announcements, and the questions and comment period will follow. And we'll end our program promptly at 12:30 because there'll be 1 a.m. in India for Mihir. And we, ahead of time, appreciate him and thank him for staying past midnight in India today with us. The program is being recorded and will be posted later this week on YouTube. The channel is Icss Marxist, where you can also see other programs of the past. So please join me in welcoming Mihir Desai to our forum. Mihir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Raj, and thanks all of you for inviting me here. It's broadly what I'll be speaking about is the last 7 or 8 years, 7 years, I would say, from 2014 onwards, when the BJP government, through the NDA vehicle, that is National Democratic Alliance vehicle, came to power and has been trying to reshape India completely in various ways. Broadly, the two methods by which the reshaping is happening, and I'll be speaking mainly about the laws and the policies which have happened in the last 7 years. The one element of it is what they call Hindu Rashtra, that is a Hindu state. They want to convert an Indian state, which is a secular state, into an Hindu state. And the second is, of course, the extensive and deepening of the neoliberal, economics. These are the two broad areas on which they are working on. Of course, when they work on these two broad areas, it leads to also various other apparatus, such as an authoritarian state, a centralized state, a state which doesn't brook any dissent, and a complete control over media, etc., etc. So I'll talk broadly about all these issues. But let me first start with how they are trying to, because this, I guess you have heard some of the earlier presentations on this venue, including there was somebody who spoke on fascism, if I'm not wrong, and somebody spoke on the farmers' struggle. These are the talks which were already held. So I'm sure you are familiar with what is happening in India, but I would just like to focus mostly on these two issues. Now, when you talk about Hindu state, okay, one is talking about a situation whereby our constitution today, and right from the time of independence, which happened in 47, our constitution came in 1950, of course, has broadly followed the secular pattern of system, right from citizenship, which will be on non-religious grounds, to freedom of religion, to equality, to non-discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, etc., etc. Rights to minorities. So all these things are given in the constitution itself. Now, what the BJP is trying to do is not necessarily to change the constitution, but to undermine it by bringing in their notion of Hindu Rashtra. And their notion of Hindu Rashtra is basically uh, a country where minorities will have no rights. I mean, that's a basic theme of Hindu Rashtra as it is unfolding right now. That minorities will have no rights. Minorities, by minorities they mean especially Muslims, but also Christians to an extent, and the lower caste, that is Dalits, etc. But right now the basic target of the Hindu Rashtra is how do you undermine the Muslim community? How do you undermine the Muslims? How do you disenfranchise them? And for that, they have done about 5 or 6 things, which I just want to broadly speak about. Okay. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Kashmir problem, which India has had right from the inception, in the sense that Kashmir was a state which, you see, when India became independent, it was divided into India and Pakistan. Okay, but there were about 560 local kingdoms which were neither under India nor Pakistan. They were local kingdoms, small, big, etc. 560. And they were given an option of either joining India or Pakistan or becoming independent. You see, these were the option given to them. And Kashmir decided to begin with that they will not take a call. They would rather go independent. But thereafter, there was an attack on Kashmir from certain groups from Pakistan. And they agreed to accede to India, okay, on the condition that apart from defense, communication, and foreign affairs, everything else will be controlled by Kashmiri people themselves. And there was a subsequent agreement that there will be a plebiscite at some stage to decide, okay, whether Kashmir will remain part of India or not. Kashmir was also to have a separate constitution, which it had. Unlike any other state in India, none of the other states have any separate constitution. Kashmir had a separate constitution. Article 370 of the Constitution of India guarantees all these things. Okay. Now, remember, Kashmir is majority Muslim state. Okay, 65% of the population is Muslim, and Kashmir Valley, which is one of the most important parts of Kashmir, has about 95-97% of Muslim population. Kashmir Valley has been seeing an upsurge since last about 30 years. Since 1990, there has been a major upsurge going on. There is virtually a military occupation, etc., etc. And in 2019, the Indian government decided to do away with Article 370, which basically meant that Kashmir's autonomy, which it had in passing laws, accepting for defense, communication, etc., was completely taken away. Okay. And Kashmir from a state was made into a union territory, which meant that it comes under direct control of the central government, okay, which is the BJP government. So the first thing they did was remove the autonomy of Kashmir altogether, put Kashmir under military rule. They blocked the internet there for more than a year. No internet was allowed to function there for more than a year. It's only now recently that it has started, slowly. So this was the first attack which happened. It's not the first attack, but it was one of the major attacks which happened in India as far as the Muslim community is concerned. That the only state where they were on a majority has been dismantled as a state. Its autonomy has been taken away, and they now come on directly under the central government. This is one thing, one example which I wanted to give. The second example was what is known as the amendment to the Citizenship Act. Okay. Now, the Indian Constitution, like your 14th Amendment of the American Constitution, provided that as on the date when the Constitution comes into place, anybody who is born in India will be an Indian citizen. Like here it is under the 14th Amendment that by birth you acquire American citizenship. So similarly, in India, it was that by birth you occupy, you get Indian citizenship. It is irrelevant which community, which caste you belong to, which religion you belong to. Once you're born in India, you are an Indian citizen. This was, and the subsequent, and after 1950, the citizenship was to be decided by the parliament by making a law. So the parliament made a law in 1955, which essentially continued with this practice that once you are born in India, you will be a citizen of India. It doesn't matter. Now, this law kept on changing in 80s and 90s. 90s also, late 90s, when again the BJP was in power for a period of 5 years. Okay. And now this law is changed dramatically. And that's why there were huge protests across the country in India. And the change which they are seeking to bring is twofold. One change which they are seeking to bring is saying by an amendment that even if you are an illegal immigrant, if you are an illegal immigrant from either Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Bangladesh, and if you belong to the Hindu, Christian, Jain, Parsi, Buddhist communities, then you will be entitled to get citizenship of India. Okay. So even if you have come to India, if you have crossed over, like it happens in USA, Mexicans coming, etc., South America coming in illegally. Okay. So they said that yes, we will give you citizenship provided you are not Muslims. Okay, this is the criteria which, provided you are from these three countries and provided you are not a Muslim, you will get citizenship. Okay. This is one thing which happened. So this again has been challenged in Supreme Court. The challenge is pending, but this was one way in which they wanted to undermine the Muslims by bringing in this amendment. There were huge protests across the country. Okay, spontaneous protests across the country, where hundreds of thousands of people participated over months together. And this protest continued to happen till the COVID lockdown happened, because of which then the protests had to be withdrawn. But till that time, for a period of 3 months, 4 months, the protests continued. Okay? Where people used to occupy a place and stay there day, night. Lots of women and young people took active part in this. But this is one way in which they wanted to change the citizenship law without by sidelining the Muslim community altogether. Okay? And you see the situation is like this, that today in Myanmar, or which is also a border state of India, okay? There are a lot of people who are known as Rohingyas, who are Muslims, predominantly Muslims, who have been pushed into India because there was a genocide of Rohingyas in Myanmar. So they've been pushed into India, they've been pushed into Bangladesh, but they are sought to be deported back to Myanmar. The government has taken a conscious policy that we will shift and send them back to Myanmar. Okay, let them be killed there, it doesn't matter, but we will send them back to Myanmar. But if you are a Hindu, if you are a Christian, if you're a Buddhist, Jain, etc., then you will be allowed to get entry into India and get citizenship. So this is this is the second way in which they are seeking to do it, sideline. The third thing which they are doing, and this affects not just the Muslims, but also this again happened in 2019. This also affects not just the Muslims, but also a large number of poor people, is they have for the first time brought in compulsory registration of citizenship. Okay. So it is not enough that I have a voting card. It is not enough that I have a passport. It is not enough that I have a ration card. It is not enough that I have a social security card. I must prove that I was born in India, and I must prove that my parents or one of them was born in India. Only then will I be treated as an Indian citizen. Okay. This is the other thing they have started. Now the problem here is this, that about India being a very, very poor country is not a country where people have documents. Okay. For instance, there is a compulsory registration of births and deaths law, which requires that every birth should be registered. But about 45% of the percent of people, even as on today, who are born, okay, children who are born, okay, are not registered. Okay. They're born at home, they're born at in rural areas, etc., etc. They're not, there's no concept of registration. So, what is happening is therefore that a large number of people are fearing that they'll be disenfranchised. Okay? And once you are disenfranchised, once your citizenship gets taken over, either you'll end up in a jail till you are deported to some country which will be willing to accept you, and which is very unlikely. So, or B, you will be part of the mass labor force which will have no rights whatsoever. You become part of a labor force which has no rights whatsoever, because because you try to exercise your right, and you will be threatened with being thrown out of the country. Okay? So this is going to happen across India. This has already happened in one state of India on the eastern side called Assam. Okay, where this process is called NRC, that is National Registration of Citizenship process. It took place, and 1.8 million people have been disenfranchised there. Okay, in Assam, in one state. Okay, and you are talking about more than 30 states in India. So in one state, 1.8 million people have already been declared to be disenfranchised, and this problem, and a large number of them Muslims, and all of them poor. Okay, marginalized, Dalits, tribal people, who don't have documents. Okay, so this is the other thing, and this is a combination of neoliberal economics as well as Hindu Rashtra. It's a combination. So this is the second. As I said, the Kashmir was one thing. The second thing is this CAA, NRC, etc., etc. The third thing by which they are trying to bring in this Hindu state is what they call is love jihad laws. Now, love jihad basically, according to them, means if you marry somebody from another community and that person converts to your community, it is called love jihad. Okay, that means you are marrying somebody in order to convert that person. Okay, this is and state after state are now passing laws which prevent conversions without taking permission of the government. So if I want to convert myself to another religion, I will not be allowed to do it. If I want to marry somebody from another religion, I will not be allowed to do it without taking permission of the government. And one thing which all of us must note is that present day in India, okay, the conversion, present day in India, what is happening is that mass lynching of people belonging to the minority community, lynching of people belonging to minority community, violence against minority community is something which has been normalized. So if I am a Muslim, or if I am a Hindu, and I want to convert myself to Islam, or even if I want to convert myself to Christianity, and I go to seek permission, immediately there will be a crowd of 500 people at my house, okay, who will threaten to kill me if I convert. So it's effectively these love jihad laws, which are now sought to be passed from 2018 onwards rapidly across various state governments. Okay? They are being passed in order to ensure that conversions don't take place. And very, very, very interestingly, many of these love jihad laws have a condition that if you convert back to the religion of your ancestors, okay, it will not amount to conversion. So then you are allowed to do that. Now, convert back to your religion of ancestors means Hinduism. Okay? Because the logic being, everybody at some stage in life was a Hindu at some time in history. Okay, that's the logic. Maybe 1,000 years back, maybe 800 years back, whatever it is. So that's the religion of your ancestors. So if you convert back to Hinduism, it will not amount to conversion. But if you convert to any other religion, it will amount to conversion, and which will be restricted in a major way. So there is the third thing. The fourth thing which they are doing, which they have been doing in the last few years, is what is known as the cow protection laws. Okay, the cow protection law. The cow is considered to be, according to some sections of Hindu sects, a very, very holy. I mean, all of you know the expression "holy cow." So cow is considered to be a very holy animal, and state after state have now been passing laws banning, and beef is eaten a lot by Christians, Muslims, as well as the lower caste Hindus. that is for protein, etc., etc. And it's cheaper variety of meat, so they eat quite a lot of meat. So state after state are passing laws banning cow slaughter, as also bullock and other bull slaughter. So that is another thing by which they are bringing in this thing. So these are the ways in which they are trying to bring in a Hindu state. Now, remember one thing. Another thing which is to be remembered very clearly is that when you are talking about a Hindu state, okay, you are also talking about a state which is highly centralized and unitary in its character. Okay? That right from the beginning, because the concept of Hindu state is 100-year-old concept, and right from the beginning, it has been the belief of belief and ideology of people who are talking about Hindu state, that Hindu state is going to be a unitary state. The federalism has no place in it. It is a centralized state, and therefore, okay, a number of laws and policies which the present government have passed are also in order to further what we call the anti-federal nature of the state and centralization of the state. Like if you see, for instance, and just give you an example, the laws concerning farmers, which I guess you have heard about in one of the earlier meetings. Okay, these laws which are passed, the three laws which are right now, and massive protests are going on against them, because they're partly towards implementing neoliberalism and partly towards implementing the centralization agenda of the state. And the reason why I'm saying it is a centralization agenda of the state is because up till now, all laws concerning farming were laws passed by respective state governments depending on the conditions which were prevailing in their respective states, each state. So Maharashtra, for instance, would have a different law. Gujarat would have a different law. Various other states would have a different law. And that is also because agriculture forms part of what is known as the state list. Constitution has three lists: state list, union list, and concurrent list. So if an item falls within the state list, only the state government has a power to pass laws concerning that. The union government cannot pass laws concerning that. So agriculture falls part within the state list. So the central government doesn't have the power to pass laws concerning that. But in the concurrent list, there is a provision called trade in grains. So they are using that provision, okay, to say that even central government can pass laws, and because of that they have passed these laws for the first time in Indian history. Centralized laws concerning farmers are being passed. So that's why. So this is towards centralization also, apart from the fact that it is an agenda of neoliberal politics. So that's another thing which we similar is the case with the labor codes, where you have had a large range of labor laws which were there, but now they have been combined into 4 labor codes by the central government, okay, which wants uniformity throughout the country, centralization throughout the country, etc. They also recently, just a few days back, maybe 10 days back, Delhi, which is a state. Delhi is the capital of India, which is also a state, because it's not just Delhi city. There's a larger body, larger geographical area involved, okay, which is a state and which had an elected government. They've suddenly passed a law now, the central government, 10 days back, which says that all laws passed by the Delhi elected people, okay, elected representatives, will have to be consented to by the governor of Delhi, lieutenant governor of Delhi, who is appointed by the central government. Okay. So Delhi's autonomy, even despite having elected representatives, is taken away and put into and given to the central government. Okay. This is and the reason being, Delhi has never been ruled by BJP. By and large, never been ruled by BJP. It is right now ruled by another party called Aam Aadmi Party, AAP. Okay, that is ruling it. And Delhi does, and the central government wants to control Delhi completely, and therefore they have passed this new law, centralization. So they are going slowly for centralization. Similarly, they have passed laws concerning what is known as GST. That's a centralized law concerning taxation. Which what happens is that earlier states used to be allowed to tax the people within the state by various means in order to get revenue for expenditure. Now what they've done is they've passed what is called the GST. So all taxation is done by the central government. And then they are supposed to give some portion to the state government, but state government's right to impose taxes has been taken away. So again, here there is a centralization. So that is another thing which is very important, which we must keep in mind. So these are the ways in which the present central government is bringing in anti-minority. They are also, of course, as usual, they are anti-women. The Hindu Rashtra is very much anti-women and anti the scheduled caste. And the way they are going against anti-scheduled caste, that is, by scheduled caste I mean untouchables. Okay, the Constitution provides reservation for the untouchables in jobs and in education. Okay, but in jobs it is provided essentially only in government jobs. That in government jobs, if you belong to the scheduled castes, which are the untouchables, then you get 15% reservation in government jobs. You are entitled because of historical reasons where they were not able to get access to any facilities of life. That's why this reservation has been provided. Now, what they are doing is they are not doing away with reservation per se. What they are doing instead is, as I told you, that the reservation applies to government jobs. What they are doing is privatizing a lot of government ventures. For instance, now there is a move to privatize all the banks. Public sector enterprises, okay, are being sold. Airports are being sold to private parties. Okay, railways are now sought to be sold. So you have a massive selling, and this is of course part of the neoliberal agenda, whereby they want to privatize, that the state's role becomes a law and order state, and it really facilitates the market, free market. That's the idea. But it is also this also leads to the untouchables not getting access to jobs, because once any entity is privatized, reservations stop. So this is the way they are going after the untouchables. They won't stop reservation. They'll continue reservation in a very, very, very kind of a limited way. They'll continue reservations, but they will continue to get reduced, eroded, as major public enterprises get privatized, where people had access through reservation. So that's the other way they are doing it. Now, let me come to the second thing, that how is the present government, okay, trying to, apart from centralization in Hindu state, one of the ways in which the neoliberal government, in which you had experience of it, an extreme experience of it in Trump. Of course, the presently also the experiment is going on, but the extreme experiment was Trump. You have in Turkey Erdogan or Bolsonaro in Brazil and things like that. Similarly, we have Modi in India. Okay, one of the things which these right-wing ideologues don't like, as we all know, is any kind of dissent. And there are two ways in which they attack dissent, 2 or 3 ways in which they attack dissent, which has been happening in the last 5 or 6 years in India. Okay? I don't want to give an impression that before the BJP government came to power, the Congress government, which was in power, was any kind of a non-neoliberal government. It was also a neoliberal government. But there are, but the extremities to which this government is taking it is something which Congress was not able to take it for various reasons. Okay. Now, what happens is that how do you control dissent? Okay. that becomes a big issue. And that's, I think, in that sense, USA is much better suited than, much better placed than India is presently. Now, there are various institutions of accountability, either in the constitution or through statutory bodies, which have been set up across the board, okay, in India, okay, which make the executive and legislature accountable. Now, the first instrument of, and what the present government has been doing is eroding those institutions of accountability thoroughly. Okay, very, very strongly eroding these institutions of accountability. Now, the way they do it, okay, is, I'll give you example. For instance, Parliament. Now, India has, just like you have Senate and you have the other bodies at the central level, we have the Parliament, which has a lower house and an upper house. Lower house are the direct elected representatives. Upper house are partly elected by the state governments, okay, and partly nominated members. So any law which comes to the lower house has to also be passed by, which is passed by the lower house, is also to be passed by the upper house. In order to become a law. That is how it is. And then the president is unlike the American president, the Indian president is a figurehead who has to just stamp his, give his sign that yes, this is the law, kind of thing. Now, what they did was, you see, for a large number of years after the BJP came to power, while they controlled the lower house, they did not control the upper house. So there were laws which were being passed by lower house, but which were being stalled at the upper house level. Okay. So they came out with a new thing, which is this: all laws which are passed by lower house have to be passed by the upper house in order to become laws. All bills, okay, except what are known as money bills. For instance, budget. Okay, budget has to be passed by lower house, and once it is passed by lower house, it becomes a law. Okay? It doesn't have to be passed by the upper house. So what they started doing is started using the money bill technique to pass all kinds of different laws, which had nothing to do with money. For instance, India has now what is known as the AADHAR law. Now, AADHAR is a unique identification system. It's like a card given to you, which is used by this government to serve for surveillance purposes. There was a major protest against this AADHAR card or UID authority. Well, this particular law has nothing to do with money. This law basically says that every citizen must have a unique identification system and a unique identity card. That's it. But because they were facing protests in the upper house, what they did was they just converted it. They said this amounts to a money bill, and they passed it as a money bill, and that law was passed. They have done the same thing with a number of other laws. For instance, if they want to increase the age, they want to change the manner in which various tribunal judges are appointed, they pass it as a money bill. Okay? It has nothing to do with money, but they pass it as a money bill, so they don't have to go to the upper house, and the matter ends there. So this is one way in which they undermine the parliament. The second way in which they undermine the parliament, okay, the parliamentary system, is by saying that, look, there are a large number of bodies, selection, for instance, selection of the Central Bureau of Investigation. It's like your FBI. Okay, selection of Central Bureau of the head of Central Bureau of Investigation has to be done by three persons: the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, and the leader of the opposition. These three people have to select and similarly, various other high-ranking officers have to be selected by these three persons. What they came out, they suddenly came out with a new thing, that unless you have at least 10% of the seats in the parliament, you cannot have a leader of the opposition. So since the Congress, which was the next highest party, had only 50 seats, while it needed 54 seats in order to have 10% of the seats, they said that there is nothing like a leader of the opposition in the parliament. So all these bodies will not have any representative of the opposition, and they will be out. So this is the other way in which they undermine the parliament, undermine the entire procedure, and put their own people in charge of these various bodies. Okay, in charge of these executives. So this is the second thing which they did. The third thing which they did, okay, is through election. Now, remember one thing, because parliament is through elections. Now, in order to, you see, in India, unlike USA, the corporate houses cannot directly pay for elections to parties. Okay, they can't directly contribute. Okay? So what they came out with is a new system. They said that we will have something called the political bonds. Now, these political bonds, what will these political bonds do? These political bonds will essentially, okay, be bought by anybody. Like suppose I go and buy political bonds of $1 million or 1 million rupees, and then I hand it over to BJP. Okay, BJP gets it $1 million, but But my name has to be kept confidential. So who is paying that $1 million? Nobody knows. Okay. This way, they started, big corporate houses to pay a large sums of money to the BJP, and this is the way in which BJP collected a large amount of money. Where the person who is contributing is, his name is not revealed to anybody. Okay. And nobody knows who that person is. So this is another way in which they started. Now, similar methods they have used, okay, for erosion of all accountability and transparency mechanisms. You have 179 different human rights statutory bodies in India. Okay? You have the National Human Rights Commission. Each state has a state human rights commission. You have a National Minorities Commission. You have each state has a state minority commission. Similarly, child rights bodies, women rights bodies, all these bodies, for showing to the international audience, they have excellent things on paper. Okay, so there are 179 such human rights bodies which are supposed to keep a watch, which are watchdogs over the executive and legislative. But they have completely eroded these bodies by either not appointing anybody to those bodies, so they are completely dysfunctional, or appointing people of their own choice, okay, who will not go against the government. And if they go against the government, they will face serious repercussions. So this is the other thing which is happening. So you have a large, so all bodies of accountability have been completely bypassed. Similarly, the media, okay, and the social media. Social media is of course totally controlled now by the central government, and they've recently, about a month back, come out with guidelines, okay, about platforms, about the OTP platforms like Netflix and platforms like that, Amazon and whatnot. So they've brought in what is known as censorship. They're trying to bring in censorship into those areas. And censorship essentially means that anything which is against the government cannot be shown. That is essential, or anything which according to them doesn't meet their standards of morality will not be shown. So that's the other thing which they have done. So they're trying to control the social media. Okay. They have complete control over the media, over the television media. They have complete control over a number of because as is the case everywhere. These media, print media as well as social media, rely heavily on government advertisements. At least in India, they rely heavily on government advertisements, and if you do not support the government, the advertisements are stopped, and the media then faces crisis. Similarly, if you don't support the government, one of the biggest channels, television news channels, NDTV, because it was criticizing the government, they met strong. There were tax raids on their houses, etc., etc. So that was another thing. Similarly, election commission, okay, which is supposed to be an independent body. Okay? Now, election commission has 3 persons. In 2019 election, on 6 times, one of the election commissions came out with a strong report against Narendra Modi and the way he was campaigning. Strong report saying that this amounts to electoral malpractice and cannot be allowed. all 6 times he was overruled, which is one thing that you overruled it. But he was not allowed to bring to the public notice his dissent. So the dissent was not allowed to be published. Okay. So the only thing which was published was the majority opinion, and the dissent was not allowed to be published. And he was virtually driven out of the election commission by, again, there were tax raids on his house, on his family, on his wife, etc., etc. And then he was driven out of he was forced to resign from there. So this is the way in which the accountability mechanisms, which on paper are plentiful in India, okay, have been completely eroded. That is the second thing. The third thing which I just wanted to talk about, okay, is the use of laws, okay, such as use of draconian laws, okay, against human rights defenders, okay, and not only against human rights defenders, but any mass organization, trade union protests. Okay. So Raj had mentioned in the introduction that I was handling what is known as a Bhima Koregaon case, which is what? Which is a case in which about 4 lawyers, 4 academicians, 3 journalists, 4 activists, 1 poet, and one Jesuit priest have been arrested on the basis that they are part of what is known as an urban naxal. Naxal is basically a Maoist, Indian word for Maoists. So these belong to urban naxals, okay? And therefore, they've been put behind bars under a law which is called the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, in which getting bail becomes virtually impossible. So they will be in jail for the next 5 years, 10 years. We are trying to get them out on bail unsuccessfully, but they will be in jail for a large number of years, at the end of which they will not be convicted. Okay? But their entire lives, their careers will be spoiled. Okay. And these are, and what used to happen, these are not laws brought in by this government. They are laws brought in by the Congress government. But what used to happen during Congress government was that targeting was not of human rights defenders. Okay. Targeting might have been of some political opponents at the high level, etc., but not of human rights defenders, not of social, not of mass organizations so much, okay, as it is happening now. Okay. So and the basic idea being that if we stop those people who are the voices of the marginalized, like for instance lawyers, like for instance journalists are being arrested, like for instance academicians, like for instance poets, artists, etc., if we arrest them, okay, and put them behind bars, we will not only stop the voices of marginalized from reaching to the people at large, okay, but we will also ensure, okay, that it has a major chilling effect on everybody else. So this way we break organizations, we put people behind bars, and we have major chilling effect on everybody else. And remember one thing, that all these people who are arrested, okay, are not arrested for any particular crime which they have committed. Okay? It is not even an allegation that they have committed a crime. They are arrested because they are supposedly members of a Maoist organization. Okay? That's the only reason given for arresting them. Not because they have gone and bombed somebody, or gone and killed somebody, or harbored a terrorist, or committed a terrorist act, or kept some arms at their place. No. They have been arrested. And this particular module, Bhima Koregaon module, which was tried out in Bombay and Pune in Maharashtra first, has now been tried out also in Delhi during the CAA and NRC protest, which I said, the citizenship amendment protest. At that time, there was large amount of protests, as I mentioned, and there was a provoked violence. And now young students, okay, from Delhi University, from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi, have been put behind bars, okay? And they have been they have been charged with being terrorists, and so their chances of coming out on bail are very, very bleak. So this is what, and so this law is being used very, very often now, okay, against activists across the country. The other law which is being used in order to silence people is the sedition law. Okay? That if you say something against the government, okay, I mean, if you write a comment against, I mean, there are cases where people have written some comment against the chief minister, saying that the chief minister has acted improperly in doing A, B, C, D. Okay, that person is being put behind bars and saying that you have committed sedition. Okay. Similarly, I was handling a case of a cartoonist who drew some cartoons against the government, and he was put behind bars on the basis that you are committed sedition. Okay? So you have similarly the National NSA Act, that is National Security Act, where preventively you can detain people for 2 years. So these laws, these are not new laws. Let me tell you that these laws existed even earlier, but these were very marginally used earlier. Okay? Now they are being used in a systemic manner, okay, to attack all kinds of movements. These laws are being used also against the farmers' movement right now, which is going on, which was used against the CAA and NRC. There are certain Reliance, which is the biggest company in the country, belongs to the richest man in the country called Mr. Mukesh Ambani. Workers of those Reliance, because they went on strike, they were arrested under this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So you have these laws being used against farmers, against workers, against activists, against journalists across the country. Okay, and by using these laws, I wouldn't even call it a misuse. I mean, this is the use of these laws is basically to keep people behind bars for a large number of years. It's like what possibly you had experienced during, to an extent, during the McCarthy era or during the Second World War, when a whole horde of Japanese were put behind bars, even if they were US citizens. You know, the whole situation which had happened during the Second World War in US. But now what is happening here is any kind of activism is immediately being, like for instance, I'll tell you the non-governmental organizations. A lot of the non-governmental organizations which function in India, okay, have a large, get their funding from sources which are outside India. Okay, so they have to take permission of the government called FCRA permission, foreign contribution permission. They get their funding from outside India. A lot of these non-governmental organizations. The biggest of them is, of course, RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which also gets, and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, which also gets funding from outside. But anyway, when they want to attack these organizations, what they are doing is they are cancelling their foreign contribution registration. So a large number of organizations which are working among the marginalized, organizations like, including organizations like Greenpeace. Okay, Greenpeace, all accounts are frozen. Okay, in India, Amnesty International was asked to close down its offices and has been driven out of India. Okay? Amnesty International. So you have, and apart from that, there are a lot of local Indian organizations which have been forced to, leave, to stop their work. They were working with women, with children, with marginalized, with tribals, with Dalits, with Muslims. They were doing human rights work, and many of them have been. There is a clampdown on them by cancelling their what is known as the FCRA, that is the Foreign Contribution Reservation Act. So that's the other thing. So this way they're using, and plus they are allowing the lynch mobs, okay, allowing violence at the local level, okay, to go completely unpunished. So if I say something against the government or against a particular authority of the government, or if I speak against the prime minister, some people will come and beat me up, knowing fully well that they will not be even put behind bars. There will be no case filed against them. Okay, so the normalization of violence against dissenters is the other way in which they are doing. They are going about. The last thing which I wanted to speak about is clubbed with the neoliberal agenda of the state, and that is the laws concerning environmental protection. You see, what had happened was that because of various international pressures, a lot of pressures within India, like Narmada Bachao Andolan and various other groups within India, India had a very, very strong pro-environmental legal regime. Okay, you had a very, very strong legal regime which is pro-environment. For instance, if you want to start any new manufacturing unit, you have to have a public hearing. Okay? People's objections are invited. There has to be an environmental study done before you start any big project, and that has to be approved by the government, and that has to pass through scrutiny of the people, etc., etc. You cannot, for instance, build anything uh, very close to the coastal line, and India has a very, very long coastal line, so you can't build anything in order to preserve the coastline. You cannot, destroy the forests. India is again a large amount of forest land. You can't destroy the forest. So these are the kind of laws which were brought in. Okay, once this government came to power in 2014, they have diluted all the environmental laws completely. Okay? What they have done is public hearing has by and large been taken out of the of any of requirement for environmental clearance. Okay? Forest clearance is now become much more easier. Earlier, near a sanctuary or a national park, you could not have, and could not start a project. That has been done away with. Mining was earlier highly restricted. That has been done away with. Okay? So you have a system whereby the environmental laws are completely diluted at the instance of the corporate sector. Uh, because of which it is and this not only involves the environment as such, but it also involves the entire rural area, because what used to happen earlier is many of these projects lead to vast displacement. Okay? And therefore, public hearing was a very important, crucial aspect, that it should not lead to displacement, vast displacement of people. And especially mining is in tribal areas, because many of the entire mining belt is close to the tribal belt, where the Aboriginal tribes of India reside. So what is now happening is, because of this new regime, okay, they want to do unbridled mining, etc., etc. They want to invite people from outside to do mining, etc. And therefore, they are doing away with these laws, which are at one level dealing with environment, at another level dealing with displacement, okay, preventing displacement. So they are doing away with these laws, and in this manner, okay, they are trying to. I mean, this is a kind of a neoliberal agenda which goes on everywhere, which is going on now in India at a very, very rapid rate. Unfortunately for the Indian government, okay, the Indian economy is doing very, very badly right now. It's in a very, very bad state. The Indian economy. They were expecting that with the COVID issue in China, a lot of industries will come to India. Okay, because they were protesting against China. A, because of COVID, and B, because of the competition between US and China, that industries will get out of China and will come to India. But instead, they have gone to Bangladesh, they have gone to Vietnam, they have not come to India. Most of the industries have not come to India. Okay? So there is a crisis. Okay, of Indian economy. And they're trying to deal with the crisis by trying to merge their ideology with crony capitalism, and that crony capitalism will also lead to the farm sector being corporatized, the labor laws being completely, that's what they are doing. They're completely now done away with protection of the labor laws, but they are unable to provide the infrastructure. They are unable to provide the other benefits and other requirements which a thriving capitalism needs. They are unable to do that, and because of that, the economy is in a bad state, and it's unlikely that it will come out of this state in very, very soon. So they tried this very whimsical scheme called demonetisation for 4 years back, which led to further problems with the whole thing, economy. And one hopes that in 2024, when there are fresh elections, the government will change. But one doesn't know, of course, because they are controlling the elections also quite a lot, including the electronic voting machines, etc., etc. So that's the situation. That was an overall view which I just wanted to give. Thank you very much. I think I have spoken enough. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mihir. So we'll go for some brief announcements. I'll go to Jean first, and then I don't know if there's another person doing announcement because Richard Fallenbaum is out. So Jean, you will cover that appeal for funds. So please, Jean, go ahead, and then we'll come to question and answer session. And each person will have 2 minutes to comment or ask a question. Mihir will not have any restriction on his response time. So,
Raj, do I have 2 minutes? Can I just go to the washroom and come back?
Yes, please go. Yeah, of course. Go ahead, and because announcements are coming up. Go ahead, Jean.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's a very complex issue, and I'm sure people are going to have a lot of questions. And for some reason, my video won't start, but you don't need to see me. But we do want to talk about a couple of announcements. First of all, on our schedule. Let me see here. Here we go.
Jean, try again with the video, please.
Okay. Oh.
See?
I thought I had escaped. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Let me get back to my notes here. Yeah. Next week, we have our comrade, Grover Furr, who will talk about issues in Soviet history. 2 subjects in his talk. First of all, we will talk about his new book, Trotsky and the Military Conspiracy, which is available from Amazon.com. And second, he will discuss the issues concerning evidence, what evidence is, how to analyze it, and how logical fallacies and false arguments are employed to avoid facing the evidence. So I'm sure that will be very interesting. And following that, May 2nd, I will be speaking on socialism, scientific and utopian, noting that we seem to be going in the wrong direction there, going away from science and towards utopias. And then we'll have Mehmet will be talking about revolutionary theory. That's on May 9th. So we have full schedule coming up with other things also, which are all available on our website, icssmarks.org. And I think Sharon put the information on our how to donate. And Sharon, do you want to talk about that since Richard's not here?
Certainly. Hi, everybody. I put in the chat the different ways in which you can donate to ICSS. We do need money, even though, well, first of all, to maintain our technology and to maintain our use of Zoom in the present period. And I'm sure we're going to use Zoom when we come back to meeting at the library locally so that we can include many people from other areas. In addition, we support the library and it needs money to keep the lights on and make repairs to the building, etc. So various groups rent space at the library to hold meetings, and we are one of the major ones. So for those reasons, we have our own treasury, and everyone is welcome to donate. No donation is too small. And as I put in the chat all the different ways that you can do that.
Okay, so Jean, if you're done, then we'll proceed to question and comment period. And I don't see any hands up yet. Usually people let somebody else go first. So who wants to go first? Mehmet, do you want to go first?
Why not? I always have questions. But first of all, thank you very much for really very informative and very detailed, I guess, the presentation, which when I hear comrades speaking from India, and I've said this nearly at every session, is that I really hear what is happening in Turkey. I mean, every step, everything that you are mentioning. I mean, the latest in Turkey in crimes is insulting the president. Even if a kid on a social media just says, "What the hell is this guy doing?" They go and catch him. And now there used to be like a handful of cases against people who were, you know, like insulting the president in the last, I don't know, 30, 50 years. When Erdogan came, now I guess the cases stand in the tens of thousands. So this is an intimidation. One other thing I'd like to say is that, you know, with the disappearance of the finance minister, the minister of treasury in Turkey, who was Erdogan's son-in-law, $128 billion disappeared from the treasury. $128 billion. So now people are asking, and they put and the government refuses to answer. And so the people are putting billboards up saying, "Where is the 128 billion?" Then the police come and they bring down the billboard. Then people said 128 billion. Then the police comes and brings down those billboards. Now even putting up the number 128 anywhere at all is a crime. Police comes and beats you up and brings. So we are looking at a very similar situation. And in India, as you detailed, you know, the religion is being used for, you know, trying to ban the conversion and everything. Exactly the same thing happens in Turkey, but they're using it from the Muslim side. So as I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about Turkey, and I'm thinking about Philippines, I'm thinking about Bolsonaro, as you mentioned, in Brazil. What do you think is happening around the world? We are seeing the same thing here. We are seeing, look at Chicago is burning down, and police are using military equipment. And I just saw a very scary video of the police with the, you know, they have their guns drawn at a gas station where people, all people, have to come up with their hands up, and the loudspeaker says, "You are all under arrest." I mean, this is like from a movie, you know, a scary movie of catastrophe. So the world definitely is going somewhere with this. What do you think? And what are your solutions? What should the people do to confront in India and elsewhere? I don't know if you'd like to go in there, but thank you very much for a very good presentation.
Thank you.
If you want to take one question at a time, then you can respond. If you want me to collect more than one, that's up to you.
I can respond to this.
Okay.
I mean, to whatever extent I can. Yes, you're right. I mean, what is happening the world over is there is a in a sense a shift to the right, which world over, and especially in those countries which were not first world, like whether it's Brazil or Turkey or India, but were still established democracies over a period of time, you know, over decades, for instance. These are democracies which were there, and there is a strong erosion. Even if the democracy in a formal sense remains, there are elections and people will get elected, and tomorrow somebody may get voted out. Okay, there is a strong erosion of democracy which is happening, and I personally feel that the only answer I have been able to find is the Marxian answer, which may not be satisfactory in terms of how you implement it. Okay, but the only way, I mean, mass movements. Okay, and of course, the mass movements can be of the right wing also, like you're seeing in some of the places. But when I'm talking about mass movements, people's movements, mass movements, with adequate and effective leadership, are the only way to deal with these situations. How they will happen, when they will happen, I don't know. But these are not because these are like RSS in India. I'm not very familiar with what is happening. But what I was listening was that like somewhere I was reading that in USA, for instance, you had a Trump. Okay, and but Trump is not a cadre-based organization in that sense. RSS has built its cadre over 100 years. Okay? It's a cadre-based organization having tens, hundreds of thousands of people across across India, deep-rooted, increasing day by day. Okay, increasing their influence day by day, poisoning the minds of people day by day. So even if tomorrow a Modi goes or an Amit Shah go, you still have the RSS to deal with, okay, which has entrenched itself quite deeply within the Indian society. So I guess the only way to deal with it is knowing fully well that they can't succeed in at least answering the people's problems about economy and their marginalization. And that's where I guess I don't have any answers, but I guess that's the only way I see forward. I'm an eternal optimist, let me tell you that. I always believe that things are going to change for the better. So,
Okay,
hopefully.
well, that's revolutionary optimism. Jean, you're next.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And Mehmet kind of asked my question for me, but I'll ask it again in somewhat different terms. But, and I'm thinking, I'm just hope our politicians here in the United States don't hear your lecture about the way these things are done in India, because they might pick up a few new tricks. And that's certainly not something we want. So again, I think it's very instructive. We need to pay attention to this. But also, one of the things that I noted when you were talking about Kashmir and the other issues there is how much of this goes back to the heritage of British rule. That if, not just in India, I mean, Kashmir, comes out real clear there, but throughout the world, if you look at the hotspots around the world, Palestine, Israel, that used to be part of the British Empire, and other areas, Hong Kong, all the problems there, Hong Kong, so-called, the counter-revolutionaries there, say, oh, we need to go back to the British system. They don't realize that, Hong Kong was a British colony and didn't have any elections until they realized it was going to be turned over to China. And so they, instituted some, quote, reforms in order to make the situation unmanageable. So, that's been the British way of rule. And I think we need to be aware of that. And of course, here in the United States, we got rid of those turkeys way back in 1776, I think, or around there. But I think, the revolutionary solution is the one, and that's a very difficult one. And I think about the way China did it, and they totally restructured their system. But that is not without cost, and how we institute that here in the United States is certainly something we need to address. But any comments you have on this, we really appreciate what
I do feel that, I mean, you see, the British, especially in India, I mean, apart from the massive economic outflow from India to Britain and complete, deprivation of, I mean, the whole cotton farming and all those things which were in India were smashed by Manchester and things like that. So apart from that, within India itself, the whole question of Hindu-Muslim divide, okay, was something which at least Britain contributed a lot, even if they did not initiate it. But they definitely contributed it a lot in the sense from 1905. They initially had what are known as the special electorates for Muslims, okay, which started, it was not reserved seats, it was special electorates, which started causing problems. And then they divided Bengal, which is one of the largest presidency at that time, on the basis of religion, that East Bengal and West Bengal, which became a kind of, that division caused a lot of ripple. So, and from beginning, they were having a divide and rule kind of a policy, and I think that was one of the reasons which helped nurture organizations like Muslim League or organizations like RSS. Okay, these kind of policies of Britain, and I guess you're right that I mean, it's not just in India. Wherever they went, whatever they touched, it really spoiled the place when they touched. I mean, that's what seems to have happened. But right now we are left to mourning the Queen's husband's death, I guess.
Well, okay, so I don't see, oh yeah, we do have two more hands. We have Sandeep and Yusuf. So let's go with Yusuf first and then Sandeep.
No, okay.
That's the third.
Thank you very much for the instructive talk. And I just wanted to add, add the conflict between Greece and Turkey and in Cyprus not to mention Northern Ireland, to British machinations. A Turkish diplomat remarked that while many colonial powers have practiced divide and rule, the British have sort of developed this into an art. And many of the conflicts, the long-standing conflicts, including Palestine, I have are part of that legacy. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Want to respond to that, Mihir, before we take the next?
No, I'll take the two others and then respond collectively.
Okay. So Sandeep.
Hey, Mihir, thank you so much. I read about India, but I've never seen anybody putting all this together in such a coherent way. So this was very helpful. I don't travel to India as often now, and so it was really helpful for you to see somebody putting it together the way you did. See, I had a question about, when I look at recent Indian history, I think 1990 was a landmark because a lot of, political strands that have become dominant now really started with what happened in 1990 when VP Singh and Advani, took two different directions. The Mandal and Kamandal direction, if you want to, where VP Singh, for the, so that I can translate it for rest of the audience here, VP Singh took the, social justice route with, for, backward caste and other, OBCs and Dalits, while Advani went and tried to unite all the backward castes under a, Hindutva umbrella. And what we are seeing today is really the old politics in India, which was the Congress politics, the bourgeois consensus formation that Congress was doing, that has disintegrated completely. And what we see is this entire social justice platform has become regionalized. There is no central party that is fighting for it. And BJP has come in now creating a bourgeois consensus under a, Hindutva platform. But it sounds so utterly incompetent, they've made a complete mess of the economy. Even the entire, COVID situation has been mishandled so badly by them. How are they managing to stay in power? I just don't understand with the kind of mismanagement they are doing. Why are people voting for them again and again? Is there a electoral manipulation going on? Are they manipulating the voting machines? How are they able to, even the corporate world, why is it accepting BJP's leadership? They've made a hash of Indian economy, So I'd love to understand, is it just purely like communal ideology on the basis of which they are able to just, fit in people in all the positions of power and, driving India towards fascism? Is this what's going on, or, what's really happening? Why is it that they are managing to hold on to power, and why are they not losing elections?
Yeah. Should I respond?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Very quickly, I mean, you're right about 1990, but 1991, 1992 things happened. The social justice route of VP Singh, who was the prime minister, and then Advani's route of combining everybody under the Hindutva banner. And also in 1991 is when the neoliberal economic unfolds completely in India with the with the 91 budget of Narasimha Rao and all that. So these three, the combination of these three. But why does Modi continue to be in power despite the fact that he's, he has messed up so many things? I personally feel that he's still the most popular leader in India. Okay? He might be getting a few seats here and there because of voting, kind of manipulation. But he still remains the most popular leader in India as of today. And his popularity is due to complete lack of any opposition leader who is seen as a all India leader, and B, because of he being seen as somebody who stands up to a mythical Muslim monster. That kind of the strong leader who will protect us against Muslims who are about to wipe us all out, kind of a feeling which is there. So I think, ideally, as Marxists, one would like to believe that economy determines everything, but it doesn't, as we all know. Yes, if you look at it in a purely economic sense, then Modi has messed up the economy so badly that he should never have come back to power. Okay? Or at least today, whenever there are elections taking place, he should be losing the elections. Okay? Because he's mishandled the economy so badly. But that's not what is happening. Okay. Again, in state governments, after state governments, of course, he's using money power like anything. He's controlling the media. So it's not just, but he's able to project his popularity, okay, and get a hegemony over people's mind through these various methods. But that hegemony he's been able to establish, okay, and he's seen as a strong leader, a strong, decisive leader. I don't know what decision he has taken, which are strong and all that, but he's seen as, he's perceived as that. And I guess it's like, I don't know whether one goes by mass psychology of fascism or not, but it seems to reflect in people who are otherwise don't have anything else to look forward to. Look forward to him as a strong leader who will, confront the enemies. Okay, if not economically, anyway, people are poor. Okay, but it's not that he has given up populism. He does some amount of populism, but if you look at the Congress rule, okay, the amount of populism which was done by the Congress rule was tremendous. Okay, you had at least about 15-20 new laws which were brought in, new policies. Okay, the entire employment guarantee scheme, etc., which were brought in. Okay, Right to Information Act was brought in. Various other things, various other laws protecting elders, protecting manual laborers were brought in. Okay, so populism was much more. It's not that this man has given up populism, but he's able to survive even without too much of populism because of his. And now if you go to Bengal, where the elections are presently going on, the elections are absolutely on communal lines, absolutely on lines of religion. That you vote for me and I'll ensure that all these infiltrators will be out. That's Modi's line, that's what he's attacked. How long he'll be able to do that, one doesn't know. But at the moment, he's able to sustain with that.
Okay, so we have two more people. Sharat goes next, followed by Sharon Rose. Sharatlin.
Okay. So thank you. Yes. So thank you so much, Mihir, for this excellent talk. Very informative. And my question, has to do with, I mean, of course, I see this as Mehmet has said, as part of a growing trend of authoritarianism among, countries around the world, from Turkey, China, Egypt, and the use of lawfare in Latin America, such as Brazil, Ecuador. Very similar to what's happening in India, as I hear from you. And I want a little bit of clarification on some things, like some of the bills that have passed the parliament are, it seems to me, going against what must be in the constitution. I mean, for example, if money bills can be passed only by the Lok Sabha, then how is it possible I mean, what pretext is used to classify non-monetary bills as monetary bills? What pretext is used to circumvent the Constitution and remove Kashmir's status as an autonomous territory, and to suspend its parliamentary status. So I'm just wondering whether these things are happening because the might makes right, or is there actually some kind of legal pretext that gives it some sort of facade of legality?
Sharon, you'd like to ask, and then I answer both of you. Should we do that?
Okay, Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I agree that it looks like it's all over the world that this more right-wing governments are coming into power all the time. I would like to ask the question, what part of international capital benefits from this trend, let's say? So I know that some of it has to do with the exploitation of natural resources, and you talked about the watering down of environmental laws, and it's certainly true in other places. I know a little bit about the Philippines, for example. But it must be more than that. It must have to also do with the exploitation of labor and the availability of cheap labor. And I don't know to what extent international capital is involved in India, but I just know on the basis of being a Marxist that has to be part of the picture.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll first go with Sharon's question and then I'll come to Sharad's. Yeah, Sharon, you're right in the sense that, yes, international capital is involved in India, and it's not just finance capital, but also to an extent manufacturing capital, etc., etc. Of course, there is a conflict between the Indian capital at certain levels, between the Indian capital and the international capital, because Indian capital, indigenous capital, is also not small. It's like, for instance, there is a conflict by which some of the big capitalists in India kept Walmart out of India for all these years. Okay, because they wanted to control the retail industry in India, which they are some of the biggest capitalists in India. So they managed to keep Walmart out. Similarly, right now there is a huge battle going on between Reliance, which is owned by the biggest corporate house in India, and Amazon. Okay, about this OTP, what is it called? Selling things on the on internet, etc., etc. So I mean, there is a big. At the same time, you have areas where a large number of foreign capitalists come and established itself in the manufacturing sector and in the service sector in India. Earlier, you see, before 91, you were not a large number, like for instance, Coca-Cola was banned in India. Coke, Pepsi were banned in India, okay, before 91. It is only after that that, after the liberalization process started, that things like Coke, because Indian government had a policy of protecting the Indian capital, okay, at that time. But after 91, it's opened up and now you have Coke and Pepsi and all that, everything is there. Okay? So, there is always an availability of cheap labor in India right from the beginning. I mean, it's always been there because of poverty, because of the population. You had cheap labor available. Okay, always. Now with what I was talking about, the NRC, CAA, which the citizenship law, what you are going to have is another mass of population, which will be even cheaper than the present, which will be made available to the corporate sector. That is another. A large part of India were not open to the corporate sectors, Indian or outside. There is forest areas, etc., which are now being opened up. Okay? So those those are sectors where but India would like to invite much more foreign capital to come in India. But that is not happening for whatever reason. Maybe they are finding, because I was reading somewhere that some 40 or 50 big industries from China left China. Big companies left China after the COVID thing started. Okay? And out of those 40, about 20 or 21 went to Vietnam, some 10, 12 went to Bangladesh, and some 2 came to India. Okay, now, so it was not, I mean, the possibly they feel that the democracy which exists in India, or which used to exist at least in India, allowing freedom of protest, allowing a lot of, quite a number of mass movements which were there, etc., etc. It does not, and also the labor laws which were there, now they are being changed. Now the labor laws are being changed. But the labor laws which were there, also the farming laws which were there earlier, which are now being changed, okay, these were seen possibly as impediments to have free flow of foreign capital in India. Okay, and now these are being diluted with and the hope is that of the Indian state is that these people will come in and the foreign capital will flow in large numbers. In fact, there was a law passed about 10 years, 15 years back called the Special Economic Zones Act, which allowed big special economic zones to be formed, like they had done in China. Where infrastructure is provided and then foreign companies come in, they are not liable to tax, etc. The labor laws are not applicable there. But even those collapsed. Those SEZs also collapsed. They didn't work because the level of infrastructure you need wasn't available. Okay, the kind of roads you need wasn't available. The amount of electricity you need wasn't available. So all those things were there. So the infrastructure wasn't. Now they are trying to revamp it. Of course, they're not. Whether they will be able to do it or not is a different matter. But that's what they are trying to do. Now, coming to Sharat's question, you see, you are right that in fact one of the debates which has been going on amongst the Indian activists is that whether the present government needs to change the constitution in order to bring out its changes, or can it do under the present constitution? Okay, because the constitution provides for various things like equality, citizenship, this, that, and the other. My argument has been that till such time as the Indian higher judiciary supports the government, and which it has been blindly supporting presently, okay, it's even unlike the US courts, where people appointed by Trump did not allow his election petitions in USA. When he challenged the elections, even people who were appointed by Trump did not hold in his favor. You see, so that certain level of independence was there. Okay, But here, these people are not appointed by the government. Okay, the Indian judiciary is very peculiar. The judiciary appoints itself. That's how the judicial system works. The Supreme Court appoints its own judges. That's how it works. But despite that, it has been completely, totally subservient to the present government. So whenever you take a big issue like Kashmir, which a lot of us feel is anti-constitutional, or the citizenship law, which is anti-constitutional, either they will decide in favor of the government, or they will not decide the case for 10 years, by which time the whole issue becomes, Kashmir by that time will be fully, what do you do at the end of 10 years? Because new laws have come in, new land laws have come in, everything, new citizenship law has come in, people have been expelled out of the country. What do you do? So that is what. So one of the things which I did not talk about is the complete wilting of the higher judiciary to the present government. And that has something which has been very shocking, because Indian judiciary generally has been a very, very proactive, and is seen by many to be the most powerful judiciary in the world, because it can do. Unlike the say US Supreme Court, the Indian judiciary lays down economic policies. It lays down all kinds of. It does everything. But when it comes to the present government, it has been deferring to whatever the government does, whether it's constitutional or not, until such time as the Supreme Court is agreeing with what the government does. Because ultimately, whether something is constitutional or not is to be decided by the courts. And if the courts are deciding in favor of the government is not bothered. It's only when the courts start deciding against the establishment will the government think of changing the constitution. So right now they don't have to do all that. Right now it's a happy Humpty Dumpty kind of a situation between the government and the Supreme Court for various reasons, a large number of reasons, including control over individual. They've found skeletons in every judge's cupboard, and they're controlling judges that way, etc. So yes, whatever they are doing is not constitutional according to a lot of us, and that's why we have challenged this constitutionality in the courts. But the courts have been very disappointing in this whole thing. That's the whole situation.
So thank you, Mihir. I don't see another hand, so I'm going to come in to say something. Thank you for a very informative talk and the discussion that has followed. So the question is, Marxists believe the best form of capitalist system is the democracy, the bourgeois democracy, in which people can vote and throw the party out of office, but it so happens that only the bourgeois parties are there, so the capitalist system remains intact. That's Lenin's critique of bourgeois democracy. So that's why we call it bourgeois democracy. And the bourgeois democracy is not working out right now. So the problem, I think, is fundamentally, seems to me, is the problem with capitalism itself. So capitalism today has reached a stage, something like, seems to me, what Lenin had described in 1916 in his work called Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, the economic analysis of capitalism at that stage. So it seems to me that the two world wars destroyed enough capital that it became functional again. It could accumulate, could have rate of profit, etc. But all of that has now run into this. So China was an outflow of excess capital from Europe and the United States, but then China has accumulated capital. So the problem is back to the same problem that happens with the overaccumulation of capital, which leads to overproduction, basically overproduction of capital, which is expressed in commodities overproduction, too much money in the bank, etc. So this is the peculiar thing. It has come back, but it's similar, except that the word is not colonized in a direct way. So do you want to comment or something like that? Because I think this is a fundamental problem. Otherwise, Mehmet was asking the same thing. It appears in so many places it has to have a common root. What is your take on it? We can hear you. Your microphone is off.
I think Eugene has raised his hand. He wants to say something first.
Yeah, Gene, go ahead.
Well, actually, I was looking forward to other people speaking that haven't spoken yet. But if there are none, I will go ahead and throw what I have to say in there. And again, what Lenin said, I just think about what Stalin, how he summarized what Leninism is. He said Leninism is Marxism in the age of imperialism and proletarian revolution. And he continues to say, in other words, Leninism is the theory and practice of the dictatorship of the proletariat. So I kind of, support this idea. And we have to look at there are two kinds of dictatorships in the world today. One is the bourgeois dictatorships, which call themselves democracies, which as, living in one, I know it's not a democracy. But then the other kind is the dictatorship of the proletariat. And I just think back when I was in Cuba, someone asked our Cuban hosts, how can you call yourself a democracy when you only have one party? And the Cuban says, under Batista, we had 7 parties and no democracy. Now we have one party and we have democracy. And, I know people disagree with me, but we'll talk about that. We'll continue our discussion on that, I'm sure. But I just want to say that democracy in China is far more extensive than it is in the United States. And it is a dictatorship of the proletariat. So I just want to throw that out. And you don't have to comment on it if you don't want to, but I just want to give my opinion on this ongoing discussion. And I'd appreciate our speakers' comments on that also.
Let me just say 2 things very quickly. One is that, I feel that, one way of looking at crisis of democracy is to see it as a crisis of capitalism. The other way of looking at crisis of democracy is to see it as a strengthening of capitalism, okay, as a hegemonic system. Okay, that capitalism, which needed democracy up to a particular point of time, okay, maybe in order to counter what they saw as as the communist threat, which they needed up to a particular. They don't need it now. They don't need the democratic facade possibly now, at least in some countries, okay, which they needed earlier, and they can very well carry on with their bonhomie without having this facade of democracy, and go with this the role of the state as basically law and order state, whose only role is to facilitate the capitalism. That's the only role of a state, and not a state as protector of people's rights or something like that. I'm not very sure which way I would put myself. I'm still confused about that. How do I look at the crisis of democracy today? But there are both ways one can argue. So I'm not very certain where I would place myself. About what Gene said, I think I'll need a longer discussion with him at some stage. I have some difference of opinion from what he said, but I think it calls for a longer discussion, definitely. So yes, because I feel that when you talk about socialist democracy, okay, as against bourgeois democracy, okay, Just to give you an example, for instance, India, outside of the communist bloc, as you call it, has the largest communist party in the world, parliamentary party in the world, okay, and which is even presently ruling in one state government, and it was ruling in 3 state governments up to 5 years back. Okay? It's presently ruling in one state government. As Communist Party. I mean, it's called the Communist Party of India and Marxist. Okay, I mean, how far they are Marxist, not Marxist is a separate issue, but the point is that it's CPI Marxist, which was ruling. At the same time, you don't have the kind of, people being thrown up. Like, for instance, I mean, with whatever disagreements one may have with, say, a Venezuelan situation or an Ecuadorian situation, or the situation which was in Brazil, say, 10 years back before Bolsonaro came. The kind of radical alternatives. Okay, it may not meet with our idea of classical Marxist alternatives, but definitely much more radical than the present. Present kind of alternatives. So that kind of alternatives have never been thrown up in India. It's been at a national level. I mean, at state level, yes. At a different level, yeah. At national level, that has not been thrown up. Why? Again, I think it calls for a study, which is a different kind of a study, different kind of a discussion. Thanks.
Okay, so we have 2 more hands. Norma Harrison, followed by Goulden. Norma, please.
Hi, everybody. So it seems to me that places like China and even North Korea and, well, I'll leave it at that, have been using the profiteering that's been going on to build housing for their people and supply water for their people and direct the benefits for the masses. And if that's actually what's been happening, are they also speaking, for example, you speak of the size of the Communist Party of India, are they talking about, I know China is talking about the communist principles. Are they preaching what they're doing and what the direction of their effort is, regardless the fact that it's using the benefits of the capitalist profiteering, but at no loss to the communist effort for the country? And if that's what's going on, then I say if we're not acknowledging it, we're missing the whole point. You make any compromise in order to advance the struggle to provide for people so that they can keep rising in their benefit for themselves. And if we don't keep saying it over and over again, and I told you some time ago, that's it. People, you say to them, you say to disbelievers or whatever, well, they're providing housing for everybody, taking time to do it all, but the imperialist interaction with the people stole everything from them, so that we have to build from the ground up. It takes a while. And people say, oh yeah, but that's not important. Providing housing for everybody, providing food for everybody, those are not important. I love it. Castro said, everybody eats the same. That's always taken in such the locals go, everybody eats the same. Well, we can't all eat the same, as though, taking the meaning totally incorrectly. So people forget that what we're about is gaining the world, and it's taking time. It's taking, it's taking forms that we're not accustomed to. One of the biggest problems about communism has been that people are reluctant, people in the capitalist nations that bow down to it are reluctant to give up their form of slavery and change it for what they consider to be another. When you're working for, instead of the benefit of the profiteers, you're working for the benefit of the whole state. That's really difficult or whatever for people to comprehend that that's what's going on.
Okay. Mihir, you want to take one more before you comment, or you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, Gulden Behram.
Hi, Mihir. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I'd like to ask you about the women in India. In Turkey, there was this agreement, this treaty that was signed back in 2011, I believe, in Istanbul by 39 countries. And it was basically against domestic violence. Anyone who was subjected to domestic violence was protected with this law. But Turkish government abruptly one night decided to pull out of this agreement because the reason was because it's giving women too much rights. Then we should protect men's rights against that. That was the reasoning. It's not always law, the discrimination against women in all over the place in the society. Right now, the Turkish society is moving towards Muslim rules more and more. Women are not happy in the streets, like they are being spat on if they are not covered, if somebody is thinking that they are wearing too short skirts or something like that. And this discrimination going on in Turkey, I was wondering if in India, women is experiencing the same discrimination, even in workplaces and at home. Thank you.
Yeah. You see, in India, the patriarchy is very, very deep rooted. Okay, in terms of discrimination against women, etc. But if you look at the law and the constitution, they are very neutral. For instance, neutral and anti-discriminatory. Like the constitution ensures that everybody has to be treated equally. It ensures that nobody can be discriminated on the grounds of sex. It also assures that special provisions can be made for women. So you have a domestic violence law for women. You see, you have a sexual harassment law, anti-sexual harassment law for women at workplaces. So on paper, as I was saying, that in India is a wonderful country for having brilliant paper laws. So on paper, all these laws exist, which show that which do away with discrimination. Okay. Of course, we also have personal laws. So each community is governed by their own religious laws for marriage, divorce, succession, etc., etc. But otherwise, in terms of the rape laws, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of sexual harassment in the workplace, in terms of otherwise equality on paper, it's hunky-dory, it's fine. Okay, the laws are fine, but in terms of the actual implementation of the laws, it's quite bad. I mean, see, these laws are helpful for people who are able to fight. Not everybody is in a position to fight, and now with the Hindu right-wing party coming in. Earlier, there wasn't any problem about what you wear and what you eat and all that kind of wasn't an issue. But now some of the educational institutions are saying that you can't wear jeans and come to college. That kind of thing has started. Okay, and maybe it will spread. We don't know. But otherwise, at the level of the laws, you won't be able to find too much of discrimination. There will be some discrimination here and there, but like for instance, abortion, anybody can undergo abortion. There's no problem at all. Okay, it's only thing is you can't do sex selection, sex pre-selection, because what used to happen in India is because of the deep-rooted patriarchy. If a father or a mother found out that the fetus is of a girl child, there were cases where they would abort in order to ensure that you don't get a girl child because they wanted a male child. Okay, so there is a law against that. Okay, to what extent implemented, again a different matter. So then there was this whole thing in India called sati, that a bride would burn herself on the pyre of the husband. You know that historically there were cases like that. So that has been abolished. So all that kind of things have been done away with. Okay, so on paper it's fine, and I don't think they'll go back on as far as paper on the paper protection is concerned. But in terms of reality, like I told you about the anti-Jihad laws, that if I want to convert and marry somebody, if a woman wants to convert and marry somebody of another religion, they will be stopped. Okay, so it's a combination of things. It's a deeply patriarchal society. Okay, but in terms of the laws, it's much more of a kind of a neutral kind of a society. You know, in terms of the laws. The problem in India is, of course, of implementation of those laws, as I said earlier.
And I just put a line in there that says,
Yeah.
maybe they would abort a girl because they wouldn't like to have to deal with providing a dowry.
Absolutely. Because dowry system was very, especially in the northern India, dowry system was very northern part of India. The dowry system is even now very, very strong. That when you get married, you have to provide dowry, and you don't want to do that. And also in terms of status, it is very big that if you have a male child, then your status goes up. Otherwise, it doesn't go up. So that is there very strongly.
And I just want to,
Go ahead.
law is also favoring for men in Turkey. You know, there are a lot of women killing, like 2-3 a day at least, by their significant other. And when they catch the guy, law usually says, oh, because this and this happened, this guy shouldn't be punished. And they just let the guy go. You know, laws are favoring for men.
That's women as niggers.
Yes.
Well, that's happening to Dalit women. Mihir, you want to say something about that?
Yeah. Because there is as we all know, rape is a question of power rather than of sex. For the upper caste, the caste system is very strongly entrenched, especially in the rural part of India, also in urban parts, but especially in rural part. And one of the ways of exercising power over the lower castes, okay, by the upper caste, is rape, as raping the lower caste women in order to show that show their power, that kind of a thing. So that is something which happens, which is a reality, in India.
Everybody here knows Bandit Queen story. I think who ultimately paid with her life for having stood up. Anyway, Yusuf has a question or comment. Yusuf, please go ahead.
Well, I guess this is a sort of a session. I start to find many similarities between Turkey and India. In Turkey, the press laws are repressive, are getting more repressive, but they're not overly repressive. What happens is that there are conglomerates, media conglomerates, and so if you're a dissident journalist, you could get blackballed. You won't simply find a job if they cannot find some legal means to silence you. You'll just not find employment. I wonder if there's a tendency in India in that direction.
Yes, there is strong. You see, what is happening is that first of all, earlier, say 10 or 15 years back, you had journalists who were permanent on the permanent staff of the newspapers. Because of the neoliberal politics, okay, permanency has gone, and every journalist is now contractual. Okay, so first of all, the problem which they face is that because they are contractual, they can be removed anytime anytime the management wants to remove them. That's one thing. Second thing is the number of journalists which every newspaper hires has gone down completely. So every journalist, what they have to do is I mean, not every journalist, but many journalists are now freelancers. So they write for different papers, and therefore their access to information is very limited because they are not attached to a newspaper. So their access, so suppose you want to go and access a police officer and say that I am from this newspaper, they'll say, who the hell are you? I mean, you are not from any newspaper, you are just a freelancer. We are not going to answer to you. You know, so that is another thing. And the most important thing which you said, which is happening is, of course, that you have a large number of journalists are now finding it very difficult to find work if they are writing independent stories. As they said, I was talking to the journalists, they said that, look, even as far as difference of opinion is concerned, an analytical piece is something which they won't mind. Okay, the newspapers won't find an analytical piece which gives the defect of the governments or the establishments. But a ground level informative piece is something they will always cut down. They will not allow a ground level information piece to come out, which gives an alternate vision to that of the establishment version. Okay. Analysis, they don't mind. You keep on giving your analysis, which is alternative, we'll ignore it. But ground level information is what affects them most. So that's where they don't allow any kind of, and a number of journalists have been killed, have been attacked, who are actually doing ground level journalism. And remember, India is a country with hundreds of languages. Okay, so, and each state has its own language. So the newspapers which come out also are in different languages. Okay, across the country. So you have at least 30 states, and in each state you will have 10 newspapers coming out in the language of that state, which nobody outside can understand. Okay, that language. So that's the situation. And the last thing which I just wanted to add was that as far as the only good thing is that there are a number of these platforms, media platforms on internet. Okay, which give alternative versions, which barely manage to survive because they don't have funds, they don't depend on advertisements. Advertisers don't give them advertisement, but there are a number of platforms, magazines, web magazines, which are managing to survive and which are doing good work. But otherwise, the journalists are facing a lot of repression if they come out with an alternative version. But the laws are neutral, but the ground level repression is quite a lot.
Now, Mihir, thank you for staying up this late. We can continue talking all night for you, but to you, we traditionally let the speaker go at 12:30, but we continue informal discussion. You're welcome to stay because I'm sure that's up to you.
I have to go to my work tomorrow, so I will.
Okay.
Go off.
I understand. You have.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo-Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, at yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebel Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.